Thank you everyone for being here, being on time. We have quite an extraordinary event today with the panelists spanning 10 time zones, all the way from Chuuk to Samoa, Fiji, Hawaii, and Trinidad. Before we get started, as we always do, we will have a short opening statement of our intention, and in Hawaii called an opening pule. And we have Megan who will do that for us. So please, if you will, Megan.
Sure. Pule kako. Dear Creator, thank you for this gathering today, for the ways that you have brought us together across the world. Mahalo for these mothers, these researchers and teachers and practitioners, grandmothers even. Mahalo for the ways that Breadfruit has brought us together. And in Hawaii, this sacred food is ulu. And we ask that you guide this conversation, you guide our lives with that idea of growth, with that idea of healing and restoration in the ways that we feed and nourish ourselves, our families, our communities. We ask that you keep us safe and keep us aligned so that we may continue to grow and be of service and just embody the ways that health and healing are to be lived through the ways that we love and practice and breathe and embody this essence. Thank you for all of these things. We are so grateful for this life and all the gifts that you give. Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. Amama ua noa, lele akapule.
Thank you.
So I will do a brief introduction to how the webinar will go today. This is a new format for us. We're going to have a panel format. So the idea is to have our presenters answer questions that we have prepared in advance, as well as your own questions, so we have some live interactions. And this will be more interactive and fun and inspiring, given the deep history and experience of our panelists with Breadfruit. Today's topic is cooking and nutrition, so that's very close to all of our hearts, and it really is the nexus of Breadfruit and our experience of Breadfruit, I think, in terms of connecting to Breadfruit, our own nutrition, and what actually we are what we eat. So as we eat Breadfruit and we enjoy Breadfruit in a healthy way, we become more and more connected to Breadfruit ourselves. We have some recipes from our panelists. Those will be shortly posted on the breadfruitpeople.com page. And so breadfruitpeople.com is a wonderful resource with recipes, interviews, all kinds of resources around breadfruit. And so in addition to the pre-prepared questions, as I mentioned, please ask your own personal questions. And there's a box at the bottom of your screen called the Q&A box, which is the question and answer box. So please put your answers in put your questions in the Q&A box, which will allow us to answer them either in text. The panelists can directly answer you in the Q&A box, or the ones that are most salient for live answers, we will handle those verbally. We have 90 minutes today, and so at half past the hour, we will be finished. If you have to go and we're still talking, and some of these go long, please don't feel bad if you have to go at half past the hour. We understand completely, but I just warn you, we may go over. However, the webinar is recorded. It's being recorded, and it will be available on the breadfruitpeople.com page. And that's actually quite a popular way for people to learn about what happened in the webinars if they couldn't make it to the webinar. This webinar series, this is number 8 in the series. We have 2 upcoming, so there'll be 10 in all in this phase. It is funded through the Farmers Organizations for Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific program, which is a joint partnership between the EU, ACP, IFAD, and PFON. So I feel very fortunate to be here with all of you. I think this is an extraordinary thing that we can spend this time together and share about breadfruit. I'm going to now just briefly introduce our panelists, and then we will launch into the questions. In Samoa, we have Flores Niu, who is the founder of Miss Sunshine Farms, co-founder of Samoa Women's Association of Growers, and a founding member of the Samoa Cocoa Industry Association. She currently represents the Pacific Farmers' Voice in the global advocacy group, Indigenous Peoples Major Group. She is a full-time farmer from Upolu, Samoa, and we're very grateful that you can make time to be with us. Volentedeo George is a certified chef, and she is from a large family and also the mother of a large family. And Volentedeo finds joy in finding ways to make breadfruit exciting, tasty, and fun. And she says the time spent understanding and utilizing the ways we can prepare and use breadfruit will be around for a very long time. And Volentedeo is in Trinidad. We also have Candice David. She's in Chuuk, and she is an expanded food and nutrition education program agent. And Candice grew up in Uman Island, one of the lagoon islands in Chuuk, and commutes by boat to the main island of Waino, Chuuk, in the Federated States of Micronesia, where breadfruit is still a main source of food. And Auntie Shirley and I were there in 2019, and we can certainly attest to that. And there is so much breadfruit diversity in Chuuk that there is never a season without breadfruit. So thank you for being with us, Candace. Our next presenter is Jimaima Lako in Fiji. She is a professor of food science at Fiji National University. She has been involved in a wide range of food science and technology and nutrition-related research, including diabetics, dietary intervention, dietary surveys, food safety, food security, climate change adaptation, agri-nutrition, and value chains. So many thanks to you also for joining us, Jimaima. And finally, we have Auntie Shirley Kauhaihao. She is the co-founder of Ho'oulu Ka Ulu, a project to revitalize breadfruit. She's a master weaver, a community organizer, and quite a community rebel, I would say. She is a mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and lifelong resident of Kona, right here on the island of Hawaii. So we have, as I said, an extraordinary panel. We'd like to begin with some questions to kind of get the ball rolling. And once again, reminding you to put your questions in the Q&A box as they pop into your mind. Feel free to type into the Q&A box. So our first question has to do with our deep connection to the foods that we eat. And so many of us develop our lifelong food preferences as children. And so our first question is simply, if you could please recall a memory involving breadfruit from your childhood that had an impact on you and your relationship to breadfruit. And I think through this connection, we will all learn something about how to reconnect ourselves and others to breadfruit. So if we could, perhaps we could start with Floris.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Although I'm from Samoa and I farm in Samoa, I'm actually stuck in New Zealand at the moment because I came here to do some promotional work for our women's farming calendar, which is part of the group, one of the groups that I work with in Samoa. And so I've been here for almost 6 months and in the process of organizing a food-related festival here in Auckland, which is really just to benefit the Pacific as a whole in regards to cocoa. But I'm so excited, and isn't ulu or breadfruit very lucky for us to be here today gathering and speaking about it. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My earliest memory of breadfruit when I was growing up in Samoa. I was born in Samoa, and my earliest memory would be the ulu and the miki. This is what we have in Samoa, which is baked in the umu or the earth oven, and when it comes out, it's steaming hot, obviously, and then it's matched with a sauce, which is purely just freshly squeezed coconut cream with a little bit of onion and a little bit of salt, or sometimes not even salt because we didn't have salt back in those days. But yeah, it was just sweet and tangy, and it was just the texture of the soft breadfruit that was, freshly steamed in the umu, and then dipping it into that sauce just kind of brings me all kinds of memories about my father, our plantation. My father was the one that was really kind of the food person in our household. God bless my mother's soul. She wasn't so good at cooking, but my father, I'm one of 11. So I'm the youngest of 11 children. And my father taught us how to cook. And my mother actually really loved breadfruit. That was one of her favorite things to eat as well. But having that Mickey, that's what we call Mickey, which is, I guess we call it Mickey because it kind of, every time we eat it, when we're dipping the breadfruit, the cooked breadfruit into it, and we put it in our mouth, you're sort of like making a sound, and it's sort of Mickey, and that's the word for Mickey. So I think that's why they called it that. But it was such a wonderful memory to have that, just the pure taste of the breadfruit, and then matched really, really perfectly by Mother Nature with freshly squeezed coconut cream, and the sweetness and just everything embodies comfort, family, us coming together as Pacifica people and indigenous peoples gathering around a meal and just having and enjoying it, and really fellowshipping with each other over food. And that's really kind of where I get passionate about the work that I do with food. It's all about people. It's all about us and our culture. It's an extension of who we are. And I think breadfruit is one of those things that really is underrated in cuisine today. And I love the work that you're doing, just to bringing it back alive again. It's very similar to what I'm trying to do with cacao. But ulu, or breadfruit, is so much more indigenous, because obviously cacao came from Central and South America for us, and ulu has been there for a very, very long time for us. And I think anywhere in the world, I mean, people say that there are seasons for ulu, and there's different seasons for different varieties of ulu. On my land, we grow organically. I've actually never seen my tree since I went back 2014 until now. I've never seen our tree stop fruiting. It's the continuous annual year-long season, and I think that is such a blessing from our Creator. In terms of sustainable foods and resilience, and in terms of our food security. And it's one of these foods that really needs to be looked at the way that we are starting to today. And thanks to the work that you're doing as well, it's elevating its profile and importance in the fight for food security in the Pacific. So thank you. That's okay.
Thank you so much. That was so perfect. Shall we go to Chef Volentedeo about one of your earliest childhood memories and connection with breadfruit? Let's see. You're still okay.
Yes, I want to thank the Breadfruit people for hosting this webinar. Thank Megan and Craig. Thank you, and special thanks to my supervisor and breadfruit partner, Dr. Laura Robertson. As a child growing up, we had a breadfruit tree in the yard, in the backyard. And really and truly, it was the yellow type of breadfruit. And it really bear a lot. sometimes when the season is full, you see the tree laden, and they'll get up in the morning and see a ripe one, a big ripe drop on the ground, and it is a fruit. It is a fruit and a vegetable. So I just would love to go and start eating that fruit. You don't really have to put anything with it if you want a little pinch of salt and pepper, and you will enjoy eating it just like that, you know. And being the third of 11, my mother always would love preparing breadfruit for us. She has done so many different categories in preparation, you know, and I find it is an exciting and thrilling way to take it and put it in like soup. Sometimes on a Sunday, she will, when she get a full, firm one, she will make a pie and everybody will enjoy it, you know. Then you find it is in such an abundance. You give away and you share, but still you have so much. So she would have me grate the breadfruit, you know. Sometimes she will have me roasting it. So like on a Saturday, we have to clean up and this sort of thing on all the breadfruit leaves all around. And we make that big bonfire there and we put 2 or 3 breadfruit and roast it. Then you take it, you see it get black, then you take it and you scrape it out and you clean it. And that nutty, well roasted breadfruit, you're able to make all kind of, you know, items like you make instead of using a potato, you use a breadfruit mayonnaise. So we just put the mayonnaise and you put all other things you chip up, you know, and put with it, and it tastes so good. But my recollection and my excitement with that is when she had me grating it, and you grating this tray of breadfruit because it's so much, and then let this drying it in the sun. And we have to watch at it drying in the sun and keep turning it in a way that the whole tray will be dry and crisp. But then we don't have, like, say, a blender or mill or something. So sometimes some will have their portion hung in a grater, in a mortar, sorry. Some will have the rolling pin rolling it and bring it to fine powder. Then we sift it. We had to sift it in this big sifter. Daddy used to really make all these things. So we sift that breadfruit and yet have that breadfruit flour. My mother would take it and she would make cookies. Then she will make buns and bread, you know. And it was so tasty that it captivated my mind from then up to now. And the thing about it, I really, you have to excuse me for getting excited when it comes along, preparing items with the breadfruit. You know, you get the flour and you're able to make these set of cookies as now that I'm on my own with my children and I start making the breadfruit flour and all kind of preparations for them. You make pancake, then I make waffle, and you make the syrup to go with it. But you're using the breadfruit self to make the breadfruit syrup, you know, to go with the pancake and to go with the waffle. Then to make some cookies, and they would hear, Mommy, put some chocolate chip in it now, that will make it nice. So then they help you because they are your best taste, and the 6 of them I have, and everybody will, you know, want to put their input. Then you put your little cherries and this sort of thing. So on a weekend, it's baking, but you're using the breadfruit flour to bake, and you're making cookies, you're making cake, you're making pies, and you're adding all these things with it. The thing about it with the breadfruit flour, you don't have to necessarily put wheat flour with it. You get so much that you don't need wheat flour to put and make the breadfruit items that you want to make. That is in itself. And then again, in research and learning now, you realize that breadfruit flour is gluten-free. So people who cannot absorb gluten, they will really enjoy the breadfruit making items with using the breadfruit flour. Then you have the breadfruit porridge. So on a morning you get up, you make porridge with the breadfruit flour. Then you have the breadfruit itself. Yes, you could cook it and make items in the full firm stage. You cook it and do other.
We lost your volume.
People now, you find they enjoy sharing with you, not realizing that, hey, all I know with breadfruit is oil down. All I know is roasted. But then when they come to terms to realize that it is bread for life, breadfruit. And I will tell them, it comes a time that suppose we on this side are not getting wheat again, we're not getting flour again, more so now that it's gone up and all these problems you're experiencing now. We have the breadfruit, and the thing about it, it is so versatile. You could prepare it in such a way by roasting it. One, you could freeze it, prepare it in a way that you could freeze it and it stays good. Then you could prepare it in a way that you're frying it. You can make breadfruit chips, just the same way you have potato chip, you cut it in a way and you make it make your breadfruit chip. All these areas that you could share and do with the preparation of breadfruit.
Thank you. What a wonderful enthusiasm you have.
You made the punch. All of that.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's move to Candace. Would you like to share with us a little bit about your early experience, early memory, something that really sticks out in your mind about breadfruit?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Candice David. I'm from Chuuk. I'm work here as in our office as a FNEP agent. So I am happy to share with us my favorite recipes of breadfruit. So before I'm gone, I like to say sorry because I just came in on board and I'm not good person on speaking English. I'm sorry if you cannot understand some of what I'm going to say.
You're doing great. We understand you.
Thank you very much. So I am happy to share what I remember when I was just little. One of the favorite food my grandfather or grandparents they doing when I'm just little. I joined them. That's when I learned some of the recipe from them. The breadfruit recipe on the kind of food called what. This is the main source of food in Chuuk. It's made from breadfruit. So I can say that this kind of food is not just for one time more, because there is never a season without breadfruit. This is what we have here in Chuuk. This is what breadfruit is our main source of food here in Chuuk. I think if you guys can come here in Chuuk and stay, you can save your money. You don't need to buy food, buy rice. You can just eat our food at all. Thank you very much. Sorry, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Candace's explanation of the Chuukese fermented breadfruit will be posted to the breadfruitpeople.com website. Let's move to Dr. Lako in Fiji. If you could please share your childhood memory with us.
Bulavanaka from Fiji, and Bulavanaka to everyone who's listening in. For me, my memories for being a child. I was raised in a small island community, isolated and rural Lauan community from Lau on Vivia Island. So it's isolated and rarely visited by boats. Boats can come in once every month. So we were mainly consuming lots of crops on the island, mainly taro, yams, particularly when yams in season, and also breadfruit, because breadfruit was readily available and also surrounding our homes. So we don't normally have like tea as we have today. We normally have fruits, vegetables, and with fish early in the morning. My father, always, wakes up very, very early in the morning and is out in the bush and comes back about 9 to 10 o'clock when it's ready, for breakfast. He doesn't like, having just tea. He always want real heavy food. So, so my mother is always be ready, with that. So if it's during breadfruit season, we can have breadfruit for morning, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And usually, from Trinidad with George, we will be having roasted breadfruit. My favorite is basically the half-ripe breadfruit and all roasted. This can be eaten with anything. Yeah, eaten with anything, with vegetables, with fish, and even made into desserts, right? So when it's in excess, my father used to make lots and lots of desserts. We call that vakalolo, and that's basically my favorite. And we can share that, with all the families, surrounding our homes. And we will be, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, when it's during season, for breadfruit. My love for the vakalolo, for the dessert, brought me, all the way here to Suva. My home here has about like 5 breadfruit trees. And we normally have it almost every week when it's in season. And my grandchildren, I've taught my grandchildren really how to roast breadfruit, and they love doing that. And we started now making, this dessert. Although I'm not very good at it, but we've tried. But when my father was still alive, I actually got my students at USP because I was thinking, how can we preserve, this dessert? So we tried to bottle and can it. So we got some of our students to, to do some training to pack and to can the vakalolo, the breadfruit, vakalolo breadfruit. So my father, I asked my father if he could actually train these boys, how to make them, even how to make the sauces, caramelize the coconut as part of that. Yeah, so, and then we were sort of like trying to sell them and people came actually buying them. But unfortunately, maybe because of the way we were preparing, it's too much handling practices. So we want some kind of automation, to actually have a longer shelf life for that particular dessert. So that's basically my memory that brought me right to this point that we are trying to can, this particular dessert. We're still working on it. Our shelf life is still not very successful at the moment. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Vinaka. That was wonderful. Now we come to Auntie Shirley. Would you like to share?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for having me here. Thank you, Craig. I was raised by my grandparents, and prior to my birth, my grandparents were farmers. Then when I was born, they'd gotten into the fishery. And so we had a property right on the shoreline. So Ulu did not really come into my life till a little bit later when I was about 6 or 7. And because my grandfather loved Ulu, so when it was in season, and it is seasonal in Hawaii, the variety that I'm familiar with, and his favorite way was to have it pounded into poi, which is sort of like Chuuk, the Chuukese cone, except cone is much more doughy and thicker because no water or any other liquid is added to it. And I got to introduce on our trip to Chuuk. So ulu poi was the thing. My grandmother preferred the ulu baked when it was half ripe, just turning soft. That's when she baked it. And I guess it was, for me, we were not isolated where that was our major food source or protein. So there wasn't too much variations as to how it was prepared. So poi was one, baked in the oven was the other, or boiled or steamed. And then you add whatever you want to have it with your meal. It wasn't until later with the introduction to different ways that other races prepare their foods and then incorporated it with our native ulu that I started to venture into trying new things. And that's what got me into traveling with Craig to to Samoa, to Chuuk, to Palau. It was great. But there are many wonderful memories about going to those various islands.
Thank you. Thank you. Auntie Shirley has been an absolute creative genius, as all of you have been, in adapting conventional recipes to breadfruit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question. Our second question is about expanding and promoting breadfruit to a wider audience, a wider consumption. And so Breadfruit People is about promoting breadfruit, about engaging people in breadfruit, but not just in any way, in ways that benefit local communities, in ways that benefit the environment, nutritionally favorable ways. So this question is about some practical ways that you envision breadfruit becoming more readily available and more in demand, more consumed in today's environment. So with all these other foods, fast foods and other foods available, what are some of your thoughts about practical ways to inspire people to consume breadfruit in healthy ways? So I think we'll go with the same order as before. We will start with Floris, please.
Thank you, Craig. Wow, so such amazing memories that everyone has just shared with breadfruit. I think we all have something in common, and that's the half-ripe breadfruit, baked or char grilled, and then, you know, added to our coconut milk or lolo or whatever. It's really wonderful. But I think over the last 20 or so years in Samoa, although I've grown up in New Zealand, I've always had a deeper connection with our homeland in Samoa. So it was every school holiday going back to Samoa up until I was 25, really. And then I moved back at one stage when I was 25. So I noticed around that time that there was starting to be kind of a presence of breadfruit chips and those sorts of things in the restaurants, and you know, like with the similar to cassava chips and that sort of thing. And I think it's something that could be utilized. It could still go back. I mean, I don't see it as often now, and I'm not sure why that has stopped. I'm talking just about Samoa at the moment, because it's such a wonderful and healthy accompaniment as opposed to any dish. Like, for example, we have not sushi, sashimi and poke. So, you know, usually we accompany that with a bit of coconut, slice of coconut, and now they have fries with it. But previously we had either cassava chips or ulu chips. And there was a time where we really encouraged to have, you know, really nice, thinly sliced ulu chips that was not, you know, drenching in, you know, dripping in oil and everything, but also, you know, being cooked in coconut oil, which was a lot better option. And we had them in slithers on top of salads and that sort of thing. So I think it could still be developed within the hospitality industry, the hotels and the fine restaurants, to have ulu in a very kind of refined way, as an accompaniment to many different dishes. And I think somebody should take that on board and just really run with that. But there's ulu can be amazing in salads. I've actually tried ulu. I tried pickling ulu as well. So I pickled them with a number of other different things. So I would pickle them. So there's a whole moment at the moment with a lot of the groups that are women's groups that are happening, and everybody's doing pickling and that sort of thing. So it's great because, you know, it reminds us in terms of ulu of the way that we used to preserve ulu in Samoa, as well as, you know, many other Pacific countries, which is what we called fa'amafu. So there was a little trend a couple of years ago where the women's organizations that had these, for swag, for example, had these workshops where it was teaching women to pickle and make chutneys and jams and preserve things so that they could have another source of income. So I really enjoyed when I was pickling the ulu with other different vegetables, and doing that, and also having that as an accompaniment in a more kind of high-end restaurant. You could really develop that as a thing throughout the industry. So I think this is where really a lot of amazing people who are doing amazing work, for example, the Food Revolution people as well, who are promoting healthier foods and Pacific foods, could take on ulu and really turn it into these wonderful little accompaniments to any dish, because ulu goes with anything. I've actually used ulu a lot I have a program where it's not really a program, it's very informal. I invite people to come on my farm from all over the world. And I was doing that before COVID, obviously. And they're woofers. It's a program that's existed many, many years ago where anyone who's, it's worldwide opportunities on organic farms. And I'm sure there's a lot in Hawaii as well. And a lot of these woofers come on my farm, and the food that I supply them is all from the farm. You know, it's organically grown. And so they take, you know, some of them will not be familiar with a lot of the things that I grow in my garden and some of the indigenous foods that we have as well. So, for example, breadfruit was one of the foods that a lot of my woofers from Europe and Bhutan and other different countries, they were very creative in using breadfruit in new ways than I was, you know, and they had actually taught me a lot of recipes that my Italian girl, we actually sat down one day and we just made gnocchi with the ulu. And we experimented with the different way by using the ulu that was baked, char grilled, which is a lot drier. And then we used the ulu that was boiled and then cooled down. And we found that the elasticity, you know, the ability not to break up was better with the drier baked ulu. And so our gnocchi was out of this world, and it could be something that would be served to the Queen of England, you know, if you like. It was just really amazing. And we even made the sauce with the starch from the ulu, with a little bit from the ulu. So all of those things, you know, using the ingenuity and the ideas from other cultures and fusing them with our own traditional knowledge. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of that. And I think that's one of the things that we've always looked at, doing a recipe book with the dishes that have been introduced, by using all of our homegrown foods by the woofers. I was going to call it something like the woofers recipes in Samoa. So I think that's another little project. But I think the practical ways of looking at incorporating ulu into everyday life, I think people just, especially restaurants, because people are about going out to eat. And I think chefs and all these people in the food and hospitality industry are the key to really kind of putting that out there. And it's great to see some of you here in the panels. And I'd love to share more recipes with you on your website as well, because I have some great recipes from all around the world on different ways of using ulu. And we also, because we're cacao and cocoa growers, and we experiment exactly the same way that you're doing now with ulu, with cacao. This whole festival that's coming up in New Zealand is all about this. It's we could do one for ulu, it'd be amazing. But the idea is really just to have people understand and know more about their own indigenous foods, and to not be afraid to work with it and to cook with it. So yeah, this breadfruit thing you're onto, it's amazing. And I wish all the best, and anyone that's joining in as a participant. I hope you get a lot out of this, because it's wonderful.
Thank you so much for that. Wonderful. Let's move to Chef Volentedeo. What are your thoughts about inspiring people? I know you've shared some things. What else comes to mind?
For me, having a breadfruit fair, like all things breadfruit, is a good way to showcase and to promote the education to people about the breadfruit, young people and everybody, especially those who just know about oil down or roasting. That fair will showcase what could be done with breadfruit. And there we would be able to empower them and enlighten them about the nutritional values of eating the fruit, what good it is for your body, how it will help you, to be able to withstand even having like diabetes and high blood pressure and all of that. And having the cookbook like the one I did, then samples. In that fair now, you have samples of what you could prepare with breadfruit in all its entirety: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, and you find you will bring the awareness and the enlightenment to people how you can produce items from this bread for life. It is for life, and the good thing about it, it grows where we can reach it, So that is what working in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit, and helping me to understand that there are so many things that you could utilize, because one breadfruit you could take and make so many different items, and you get a big full one. Now you realize the pricing of these breadfruit is really, amazing. So when you bring the awareness to people, especially you find young people would look at it, all I know they do on with breadfruit is oil down. Some like it, some don't like it. All I know my grandmother or my mother or somebody do is the roasted. But when you show them that they could do various items and recipes that they could produce, both with the fresh breadfruit and with the breadfruit flour, that is going to open up their understanding and enlighten them so much so that everywhere they see a breadfruit tree, they want to get one. Some would even want to have a breadfruit tree in the yard, and they would want to have, they would want to experiment with that breadfruit when they get it, realizing that oil dung is not the only thing you could use to bring about an awareness. What we want is an awareness with the people. So a breadfruit, a food fair, all things breadfruit, they would see what can be done. You could curry it. You could do so many different things with that one breadfruit, that the satisfaction and the enlightenment and the understanding. Those who destroy or cutting down the breadfruit tree or just leaving it there to spoil, they would not do it again. The ripe one is a fruit. And as you go along with it, you will see how many things you can do with it. So that is my recollection. That is my way of promoting and educating those who don't know and those who don't understand and those who don't realize the importance of this bread for life, breadfruit.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. Okay, actually we have Candace next. I think before we go to Candace, I'll just remind people to put your questions in the Q&A box so that we can address them when we're done with the pre-prepared questions. Okay, so shall we go to Candace? What thoughts have you in your part of the world about promoting the use of breadfruit? I know everybody in Chuuk eats breadfruit already, but perhaps you have some ideas about that can be valuable to the rest of us.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. So in Chuuk, we have so many different kinds of recipe of breadfruit. So the one I'm going to share with us this morning, the easy way of making breadfruit. So at my house, when I woke up early morning, every morning, so my dad just make me, when I ready to go to my school, and my dad just make me the kind of cooking breadfruit we call aporo. This is the easy way of make breadfruit. So this kind of food, it's we can say it's the energy food. So as what I say, there are so many kinds of recipe of cooking breadfruit here in Chuuk, but this is what I'm going to share with us. The only one, the easy one, we call it aporo. So this is what I just remember for this time. I'm going to share with us this morning. Thank you, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you here. Okay, Dr. Lako, would you like to share your thoughts? I know you've worked very much in food science, technology, and nutrition, but on a very community-oriented level. What are your thoughts about inspiring people to consume more breadfruit?
Yes, thank you. I think my colleagues have shared some interesting insights on how breadfruit could be promoted. I feel that we really need to demonstrate the health impact in order, because of the NCD that's quite prevalent in the Pacific today. I think having promoted from the health impact aspect, I think would be an ideal approach. Especially right now, I think according to some of the work that has been carried out, that breadfruit has low glycemic index, which basically means that it's slow to metabolize sugar, mainly because of the high levels of the amylose in it, compared to the other root crops. So maybe that's the best direction that we could take. Again, the glycemic responses depends entirely on the degree of maturity. As it ripens, the higher the glycemic index. So we can actually look at that and maybe work on a clinical trials, for us in the Pacific. Once you see the evidence, then people will copy. So so maybe evidence-based in various communities to compare the consumption, of certain variety of breadfruit, and have a control with the other types would probably, made an impressive results to see how maybe the HbA1c can be controlled and reduced, the blood sugar level. And that I think we'll work very closely with our medical department, with our Ministry of Health. They will definitely come on board with that, because right now all countries in the Pacific are trying to control, the prevalence and the rate of the NCD in the Pacific region, and also working with FAO and WHO. I think they'll jump on that wagon, if we try to work, in that particular direction, looking at the health impact of breadfruit. I know that every individual also or certain companies are developing breadfruit flour, but I think this is not readily available in supermarkets. Yeah. So maybe we'll have to work with our food processors, within our countries, to see which particular industry will be able to make flour and to make it available to everybody, in the supermarket. Because right now we are basically utilizing it, from our own homes and developing them at home level. But I think we have to go at commercial level and make sure these are readily available in the supermarket, like cassava. Yeah, I think only cassava flour is available in the supermarket right now. Yeah, and not breadfruit flour. So maybe that's one way of actually promoting that too. I also see that sweet potato wedges are already available in its frozen form in supermarkets. Yeah, maybe we can do the same, with our breadfruit wedges as well. Yeah, so we can, we can come up with maybe identify commodities that would be that can be done, at regional level, so that we flood the market. Yeah, we flood the market, with these some of these products that are healthy. Yeah, so we basically just target the healthy aspects of breadfruit. Well, we all know that chips is quite unhealthy because it's deep fried. Maybe in this case we do oven drying or grilled, those kind of cooking strategies that actually eliminates and reduces fat. Yeah, so that's basically my take, because right now I think wuto flour, we call it wuto, is underutilized. Even though it's surrounding our homes, we can see them falling and rotting on the ground without being readily used by our communities. So maybe once we start putting it out in the supermarket, then people will realize, oh, this is the way we can actually process and utilize our own breadfruit that's available at home, surrounding their communities. So in that particular case, maybe we can have like a collection center, where breadfruit could be processed and dried or something like that, and to turn into flour. So in Fiji, I think Friends of Fiji, I think, is doing a great job developing cassava flour. But I think maybe we can work with them to start utilizing, and developing breadfruit flour too, to be available to the supermarket, because their product is already in the supermarket now in Fiji, and I think it's also exported. We can also promote this in terms of the gluten-free, as someone has mentioned, in most of the coffee shops. I had just set up my coffee shop early this year. I know it's not the right time to set up a coffee shop because of this COVID. And we were basically working on gluten-free flour. And one of the major flour that we were using was actually breadfruit flour. So we have a formulation, to make cakes, to make all sorts, like crepe and waffle and whatnot you have been talking about, pies and all that. Yeah, and it's actually have airy spaces, good airy spaces, at least the elasticity and whatnot, for our flour, for our product pastry, without any wheat flour at all. We basically use our mixture of our products, with wuto flour in our formulation, which is really, really great. Yes. So yeah, I agree really with everyone here that that wuto flour or wuto can be done in any form of food, and even in drinks. So I think we are basically underestimating the power, that breadfruit can bring to the Pacific. If we work hard and become a Pacific Wuto Center, I think that would be really, really great, and tell the world that we are the, we are the owners and we are the processors, and we can do anything and promote that to the world. Thank you.
Mm. Inaka, thank you very much for those perspectives. That's a wonderful segue as well to Auntie Shirley. I'll speak for her for a moment because she doesn't like to brag. But Auntie Shirley has done many demos in supermarkets, restaurants, working with Chef Sam Choi, and also at schools. And so, and one of the wonderful things you do is adapt recipes that people are very familiar with to introduce ulu or breadfruit into those recipes. So how do you like to inspire people?
Well, first of all, I guess when I started my family, and then the youngsters, as they got older and started school, of course, when they get home from school, they want some sort of a snack. And so French fries. What kid doesn't like French fries? What adult doesn't like French fries? That's where I started. And then we morphed into other things. Hash browns, for one thing. With hash browns, if you fix a whole lot of hash browns out of ulu and you got leftovers, you can take a potato masher and mash it up a little bit and then incorporate that and fix hash with a kind of a meat. Like one thing was corned beef and then form patties and then fry that up. With the corned beef already in there, you really don't need to add any oil to your pan. So that took care of that. But then over the years, as I said earlier, the influences from other ethnic groups has made quite an impact on what I do now with ulu, for my family especially. One thing that I did, and that was for Christmas a couple of years ago, it was a get together and everybody brought a dish. And I thought, well, what the heck am I gonna do? Well, I did lasagna. I steamed the ulu and then I sliced it very thinly, and that became the pasta. And it went over great with everyone in attendance. And so that kind of led me into trying other things. And then with our visit to the various islands on our trip, sharing what we do, getting introduced to cone, and then gnocchi. It was mentioned earlier. I love gnocchi with ulu as, one of the items in the what is where we consider pasta. And my children, their children love it too. Another item or food source that's very popular, and now it's popular throughout America, is poke. Now, taking ulu, substituting that for the fish in poke, just add anything you want to it. Your green onions, for us in Hawaii, kukui nut, inamona is added. And then there's limu, or the seaweed. And you could even incorporate a little bit of the Oriental taste by either oyster sauce, shoyu, and just do anything wild. And it works. And it introduces people to ulu in different ways. And so I say, if something grabs your na'au, go with it. Try it with your family to start. And it's great. And as Craig mentioned earlier, we've done demos. We've done ulu festivals on this island. We've gone to other islands within the state of Hawaii. And then sharing when we traveled the Pacific. That was not so much about what I was going to be sharing, but what I learned while I was on the trips. One was this, it was on Saipan, I believe. And the very first demo that was being done was at a hotel. And little did I know there was a chef there. He eventually, at the very next day's demo, he showed up with his crew. And he said, I am going to be your helper. So he was my assistant. And I thought I was just a mother, just sharing what she'd done over the years. And here's this chef from a hotel, plating stuff for me, just doing it all. And just seeing the way it was being shared. It wasn't just about me sharing, it was about people sharing with us. And that was really one of my best memories, is sharing.
Thank you so much. So we're about 10 minutes after the hour. Megan, do you have any thoughts at this point? How are we doing?
I think it's so beautiful to hear everyone's stories. We have a few questions in the open side of the Q&A if we want to look at those. Otherwise, I really like the flow of just hearing what all of our panelists have to say. It sounds really nice.
Okay, good. Yes, we do have some questions here. So we have a question about recommended recipe books, and that's perfectly appropriate. Auntie Shirley's written or adapted many recipes for breadfruit. We have Chef Volentedeo, who has her wonderful book. Maybe if you feel moved, you can share some of your favorite sources of recipes. Who would like to take that one? One moment. Anyone?
I think Floris.
Did you raise your hand, Floris?
She's got some wonderful thoughts.
Auntie Shirley, you're such a blessing, and I just think you're a woman after my own heart. I do exactly the same thing as you. I've been influenced by so many by my travels and so many different people that have come through my home to be woofers or to be just travelers that are just stopping by and sharing their culture, which is what I love. When I was 17, I went on a student exchange to Costa Rica, and I lived there for a year and a bit. And I learned so much of the bases of my, the flavors of my, the spices and those things that I took back with me to my life in New Zealand and then back to Samoa. And I think some of the recipes that I always have in my mind is from remembering my Costa Rican grandmother as recipes, and then going back and adapting those with the ingredients that I have. I think everyone has great ideas for recipes, because I think when you're in your own element, in your own home, in your garden, and you don't think about having to go out to a supermarket to get anything, the only thing you have to play with, to cover your palate with, is in the garden. And that's where a lot of people who came to stay in my home, I've said to them, this is all for you, and you go with it and make something out of it. And I lived that way for the past 5 years, just eating from my own garden and creating recipes. So breadfruit was actually one of my staples, because I'm not very good with taro. And cassava, or manioca, we call it. I did a little bit of a revival of manioca, because it was getting a bit snubbed in Samoa. So I wanted to bring it back to life. And breadfruit is actually one of the other ones that I really wanted to, because I think it's such a high-end type food, and I think people don't realize the quality of it. It's similar to cacao and coconut, which is, they're superfoods. And I think what Chef was saying, Chef Lako, was saying is really important about the nutritional value and about promoting that in different ways, and doing festivals and doing all these food demonstrations. At the center of it, I really think that we have to start with the young people, with the children. And I think going into schools and introducing it from a very young age is when they'll actually have a bigger impact. When as they're growing, they'll have the memories that we have now from our own youth, and be able to demand that, and then they become the market, I suppose, to demand that. So yeah, just in terms of recipes, all the recipes are in my head. We did a few recipes incorporating cacao, and so I'll share that with you on your website as well later on. But we've done many. The gnocchi recipe I'll share with you, and the pickles and a couple of other things that we made using breadfruit and cacao. But really, breadfruit should be everyone's staple. It's the cheapest food on the island. Taro is so much more expensive. So I think, yeah, what everyone has said and shared is fantastic, and it just needs the kind of bit of support behind it to push it along. Have you guys, do you know Made in South Pacific? They used to sell breadfruit flour in New Zealand. They were actually importing it from Samoa and from somewhere else. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of them. But it was when it came onto the market, because I come from that industry before going back to farming, when it came onto the shelves of the major, so it was in the organic stores, it was in the high-end stores and supermarkets, and it was like flying off the shelf. The shelf was always empty when you go into the store. So it's really a big demand. So if someone could get into and do that again, that will be fantastic. It will be amazing, income for a lot of people who just have breadfruit lying around. Yeah. Sorry about that. I think going off a bit there.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Auntie, should we show this?
Oh,
We invite a lot of people to these webinars, but the only one who actually thinks of inviting the breadfruit is Auntie Shirley. Maybe you have, but I always forget. So today Auntie Shirley brought us, can you see here? This is, can you tell us what
Okay.
we have?
yes, it's just boiled ulu. This is the very immature, so it's about the size of a softball. And this is a mature one. And so I cooked both of them. And what I brought with me is a little bit of sour cream along with mango chutney. And so the immature one dipped in this actually is like taking artichokes, because it's that sort of vegetable like, and then consuming it. Here, you can try.
Oh, I'm gonna eat this. Okay.
So what I love to pickle. I love preserving. And so I will try just about anything. I haven't tried to pickle ulu yet, but I will try soon. And so I do a lot of preserves with our fruits. Mango, V, you're familiar with V, I'm sure. And recently for the holidays, one of my granddaughters is now engaged to a young man born in Belgium. They were here for he and various members of his family from Belgium came to Hawaii for the holidays. Guess what? One of them went home with an ulu sprout. He says he's going to try it in the greenhouse and see if he can make it work. Good luck. I hope it does. But yeah, ulu is just so versatile that you can do almost anything with it. Just use your imagination and it'll work. And this riper ulu, it's great with the same dip. But yeah, I love to share a little bit of something whenever I come to do these webinars, and when we can get together. Hopefully we'll get to do more with the supermarkets. So I will contact the supermarket that I work for and retired from to see if we can get back into it
Hmm.
and do demos to introduce people to the wonders of ulu. And one of the things I hope will help to promote ulu is for those who are now parboiling and then freezing and then it's in the marketplace. Perhaps one thing that can be done is to have a recipe on their packaging. So that'll help people to try something new. Ooh, it's starting to rain, but I'm not going to complain. And that could help promote ulu even further. We do have a friend on the island of Maui who started with ulu hummus and ulu pies, and it just flies off the shelf. You can't even get it on the island of Hawaii. Oahu, yes, Maui, yes, but I don't know if it gets to any of the other islands. So ulu is making its way into our marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Shirley. Would anybody else like to share about sources of recipes or information about breadfruit? Maybe even Irene or Kyle?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Irene. I'm with the Breadfruit People. I'm just looking at the Q&A at the moment. We have a question about how we can obtain Candace's recipe for the fermented breadfruit. That's actually now live on the Breadfruit People website. It came out in our newsletter yesterday. And everybody's recipes from today will be going live today on the Breadfruit People website. So you can have a look at that. And I'd really appreciate if anyone else has any recipe that they'd like us to highlight, like us to share, please get in touch with me. I'll put my email address in the comment section. And, you know, we could share and connect that way because we really would appreciate more recipes going up there. We have a lot of Auntie Shirley's recipes going up. So please reach out to me. I will put the email address again in the comment section, and everybody's recipes again from today will be live on the Breadfruit People website. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Irene. We have a question about favorite varieties, and I know this could go on maybe for a long time, favorite varieties of breadfruit. And I just want to take the opportunity to let all of our participants know that next webinar in 2 weeks will be on varieties and seasonality of breadfruit. So we'll have experts from around the world talking about breadfruit varieties, but maybe if somebody has some thoughts about that, even nutritional or cooking advantages of different varieties, perhaps somebody could take that. Anyone? How about, let's see.
Favorite varieties?
Yeah, favorite varieties.
Well, there's always the Hawaiian, which we call ulu, which I grew up with, and now we have more introduced varieties. Ho'oulu is actually my favorite. Of course, number 2 to the Hawaiian variety. I've got other varieties on my property, and they're just starting to come in. One just recent, but I'm not really certain about which variety it is. I thought it was the Fiji, but the labeling on the plant when I received that is Te'ia. And so I have to say I'm not too happy with it, unfortunately.
Craig, we actually have somebody who has their hand up from the attendants who might want to answer.
Okay. Okay, great. Let's see. Oh, is that Laura?
Nakula.
Let's see, sorry. Yes, please, Laura. Dr. Nkrumah.
Hi, hi everyone. I just wanted to, as a matter of fact, I think I put up my hand by mistake, but I heard your question about varieties and nutritional value. And I just wanted to share that a few years ago, we actually looked at this issue of the nutritional value of different breadfruit varieties that we had, you know, working within the region, and some of those that we had in the collection and so on. And of course, there were variations. But what was most interesting, and is something that we published, I think it was about 2019, was that breadfruit as a whole, as a crop, has a very high level of resistant starch. I think Dr. Lako referred to the fact that, you know, breadfruit does not digest as easily as the other starchy root vegetables, root crops, and so on. And we were able to identify the resistant starch levels, which were quite high. So that a lot, although breadfruit was formerly thought to be a high energy food because it had high carbohydrate content, what our work was able to show is that a lot of that carbohydrate, which consists primarily of the starch, that starch is very resistant to digestion, you know? So I think that was a good plus for breadfruit overall. There were some cultivar differences, but not very marked, you know, not stark. But just like you in the Pacific, we have a very high incidence of diabetes mellitus in the Caribbean. And with it, a lot of amputations annually. So that I thought that when you were talking about promotion, that was in fact, as Dr. Lako mentioned, it was a very good point for using to promote breadfruit, you know. But in terms of the recipes, though, what I would want to advocate is that we will try to preserve that high resistant starch, that high fiber content. Whatever we did with, you know, our breadfruit recipes, whatever formulations, we would want to preserve that. So that's basically what I, you know, crossed my mind at, but I was actually trying to write it in the chat. Okay, thanks for accommodating me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's always wonderful to hear from you. And I see that Floris has her hand raised, please.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I just didn't want to kind of take up all the time in my chatter, but we have variety. We have about 6 varieties on our farm, our plantation in Samoa. And I only know the names in Samoan, so I'll try and describe them as, yeah, as, you know, like translate what they mean. But first we have ulu ma'a, which is like a stone, ma'a means stone, so it's like a stone breadfruit, which got its name because it's really hard and it's smaller in size when it matures. And it's, you know, obviously pretty dense on the inside of the breadfruit. And I think it's good for the umu, because, you know, when you boil it, it takes a long time to boil and that sort of thing. So the 2 main ways that we prepare in Samoa is boiling and in the umu. Then we have the ulu falawa, which is, falawa means bread. So actually it's breadfruit bread or bready breadfruit, which means it has the consistency of, you know, very taste like bread and so on. And then we have the yellow variety, which is the aveloloa, and that's the one that's big and elongated. And that's what we use for taufolo, which is one of the traditional ones that we have, which, you know, the pounded breadfruit with the coconut sauce and caramel sauce. Yeah, so that that one is a very popular one for the flavor, and it's used quite widely, but it's also kind of declining in its people don't like, not everybody has, like every household would have one of all the other trees, but it's very difficult to find now a family that has one of those. So we're very lucky we have a couple of trees, and we try to encourage people to grow more different varieties. And then the main variety, which everyone eats, which is for everyday eating, it's medium to large size, and it's called maopo, and that's the one. Yeah, you know that one. Yeah, so that's the maopo, and I identify them also because of the leaves, of how the leaves are. They're quite different. Yeah, but we have 6 varieties, so they have 2 more, which I actually can't recall the names of. But my favorite would have to be the avelua, which is the big long yellow one. And then the maopo is kind of your daily bread. And the maopo was actually really good ripe or half ripe to make my desserts. And I would put a chocolate sauce over it. And it was just amazing to die for. But anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much for that. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together. I want to thank everyone for participating, all of our panelists, the time you took to be here and to think about your presentations. It's been absolutely wonderful. I also thank Kyle and Irene and the whole PFON team, the Breadfruit People team, for all of the work that you put into this and to sharing freely with really everyone in the world. And I just invite perhaps Irene or Kyle to say any last words that you might have, or even Megan.
Sure. Just from a Breadfruit People perspective, thank you everybody for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. To all the attendees and also to the panelists. Thank you so much we know everybody's busy right now, so thank you so much. We do encourage engagement and sharing. That's what the Breadfruit People is all about. Sharing ideas, sharing recipes, sharing information, sharing anything that on breadfruit, on the topic of breadfruit, resources. The Breadfruit People website is full of information that you can also access. And if you feel like you have information you'd like us to share as well, please, I really encourage it. I put in our email address on the chat group. We also have our Facebook page up and running. We have our YouTube channel, which has all the past webinars, and we'll also have this webinar recorded onto it as well. We also have a newsletter that we send out. If you'd like to be added to that, please let me know and I'll gladly add you to it. We have 2 more webinars coming up, which is on February the 4th, Fiji time, so 3rd Hawaiian time, and February 18th, so 17th Hawaiian time. So we're talking about varieties and seasonalities. So we just talked a little bit about varieties just now. So the next webinar, we'll dig in a little bit more about that. And then talk about obviously what we're doing with Breadfruit People for the future, because there's some really, really exciting projects coming up. And we're absolutely thrilled to be sharing it all with you all. So thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate the time that you've shared with us today. Minaka.
Okay, with that, thank you so much. Did you have anything, Megan?
Just gratitude, and just you all are so beautiful and inspiring. I think it's I just continue to really appreciate all of you folks' stories and recipes and lives. Mahalo.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. Inaka, Papaitele.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Auntie Shirley and Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you, Candace.
Naka.
All the
Thank
best,
you.
Vinaka.
Thank you, Irene.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Bye. Thanks.